there would be no negotiation until Mr. Peterson and Mr. Stratton entered into a real estate contract. There was nothing guaranteed, there was nothing promised, and I think Mr. Stratton is here and he can, if he so wishes, comment on this when it's time to comment. There was a one-page contract between him and Mr. Peterson. There was no subject tos. They both just basically laid it out and agreed to agree. It wasn't subject to you approving anything. It wasn't subject for anything in this. So Mr. Peterson did a huge leap. The staff has absolutely been wonderful in trying to bring all this together. Now, those two individuals, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Stratton, agreed to a 45-day close. That's why this thing has been a whirlwind for everybody, including me. Because we're trying to accomplish things quickly here. Because Mr. Peterson would love to start building his home. People have asked me, when will this happen? When will the golf course close down? I can't tell you that. I don't know. I don't have the authority behind any of this. I'm just an information gatherer. As I believed and I saw what this could be for Orem City and what I believed it could be for the neighborhood, and I knew the intentions of Mr. Peterson, he could develop this out into, and I've actually laid it out, and somebody told me it was a threat. It's not a threat. He could lay this out to 76 lots. And he has no desire to do that. He loves Orem City and wants to be here. And this is a huge, huge donation on his part. It's between $6 and $7 million as I look at it. And I don't know of a bigger donation that's ever come into Orem City. Maybe it has, but I'm not aware of it. Any questions for me?
Not yet.
Okay.
Brent has, Mr. Sumner has one.
Can you roughly break down that 6 or 7 million?
I think somebody else can.
We're going to have some in just a minute. Yeah,
I actually stepped out of what I was supposed to do. I thought this was my meeting, and I realized that was yours.
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Dickerson. Back to you, Mr. Chestnut.
As we address parts of Mr. Sumner's question and look at the costs associated with a project, to understand and place a value on what we're dealing with as far as the land transaction, and we need to ask ourselves, what does the city have now? What's our value now in this property? Knowing that we have a leasehold on the property until 2066, the value that we have on this property and what we can do with it is that we can collect $537 a year. That's the property value to us right now. And it is true that in 2066, 53 years from sometime in the future, 2066, 53 years from now, the property does come back to the city. And we have all 54 acres. But until that time, unless somebody changes the lease on the property, the only value that we have is $537 per year. Now, as you look at that, you might say, well, what does that bring to us? And the financial experts, and we've had people look at this and to try to determine the present value of that $537 over the next 53 years. What is our value then in this asset right now? And the value of that asset has been estimated using discounted cash flows, and I have people here that can answer more specific than I can on the present value of that money. Based on the price of the property ranging anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 an acre, ranges in about $800,000 to $1.2 million. That is our value of our asset in this property right now, because we can't sell the land. For us to sell the land, we would have to spend millions of dollars to buy the lease. So the only asset that we have right now is that payment stream on the lease to us. And so, as we look at that, we can say, okay, the value that we have right now on this property is about $1 million. If the individual that has purchased this lease, what he is going to do is that he is going to change the parameters of the lease and allow us to use 16.7 acres of land right now. So thus we gain the value of that property, 16.7 acres, ranging in value of $150,000 an acre to $250,000, however you want to place it, whatever value you want to place on that 16.7 acres. We get the opportunity to have that as an asset right now. He is also giving us the 3.3 acres that's adjacent to this property. And that is right over in this area. He has purchased that property. I don't know how much he paid for the property, but it comes to us, and so you can put a value on that anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 an acre. We've had the property looked at by an appraiser, and the range that he gave us on the raw value of the land was $150,000 to $200,000 an acre. And we can tie that down more specifically if we had to, but that was the range he appraised the property as per acre, $150,000 to $200,000 an acre. So whatever value you want to place on that, that becomes an asset to us. So that's a total of 20 acres that we gain in an increased asset. Also, the individual, Mr. Peterson, as Mr. Dickerson has stated, part of the agreement to the city is that he is going to put up and build a sports complex park. And the money that he is putting in an account to do that is $2.5 million to build that facility. So thus that becomes the improvements to the property and another asset to us. So through this transaction, we gain the value of the property, which we can then now own and dispose of and do with what we want. Plus, we gain the 3.3 acres in addition to that, plus we have the asset of the park facility. So all those combined, based on what value you put on the acres, can be somewhere between $6 and $7 million. So right now, without doing anything, our asset value is right around $1 million. By making this deal work and gaining this open space and park, which is desperately needed for the city, our asset is increased to somewhere, based on how you value the property, from $150,000 to $200,000 an acre, goes to $6 million to $7 million. And we can show that and address any questions you have regarding that. So when somebody says that the value of the property has increased, yes, that's how that asset has increased. Now, it is also, people might ask, well, you're giving away the 37 acres for a cheap price. In order to gain access to that 37 acres, whether it's the city, whether it's the Strattons, whether it is Mr. Peterson, whoever it is, somebody's got to buy that lease. And that's part of the cost of freeing up that land so it can be used for another use. So if that lease is sold for millions of dollars, that is part of the price of this project. And so there's two components that you have to understand. One is us and one is the leasehold. And both those components have to be addressed on what that acreage costs. And so, and I don't know how much you paid for the lease. I know that many years ago, we were looking at the lease and had it appraised, the previous city manager did, and I know that was millions of dollars in the value of a lease. And I don't know how much he paid for it, but I know it was millions of dollars that was paid for that lease. And so what's the cost for acreage? You have to throw the lease cost in there, and you have to throw the cost of improvements in there to determine what the cost per acreage are. There's two components that you have to use on what the pricing of this project is. But in today's dollars, the only thing that we could sell right now today without changing that lease is that we could sell to somebody for maybe $1 million, if somebody wants to buy it for $1 million, they could buy a payment plan of $537 a year for the next 53 years, and then they would be able to sell the property after 53 years. That's the only thing we have that we can do on that property right now. Other than that, we can't do anything else. It's control. The major controller in this is the leaseholder. And I know that because over the years, I've had many experiences in dealing with the leaseholder on this property. We've always entered into an agreement, and generally that agreement, when we go in and do any work on utilities or anything on this project, it's usually we compensate the leaseholder for doing those work on the project. So I know who has the control over this property. It's the leaseholder. And that has to be compensated. If the use is changed, that has to be paid for. Now, if you have questions regarding some of those financial components and how we increase that asset from $1 million to $6 to $7 million, Mr. Blaine Hells, who's a commercial appraiser, is here and be glad to answer questions and go into more detail on that with the City Council this time if you would like.
Council, any questions at the moment? Okay. Yeah, probably just maybe a quick overview.
Thank you. Yes. We'll flip a slide up here that he would like us to use.
I think Bruce has covered the situation pretty well. You just need to realize what the city owns is what we refer to as the lease fee. Fee simple property is if you own everything. You own all of the rights, all of the bundle of sticks is what they call it. And if you own all of that, you can use the property, you can develop it, you can sell it unencumbered. But Orem City does not own the fee simple rights of the property. They have their name on the deed, but they have entered into a lease, a long-term lease, at a very, very reduced market rent. And at the time that that was entered into, it was probably a good idea. It was great for the golf course, great for the city. I think it was a wise idea. But as time goes on, as market rates increase and that lease stays flat, the value of your ownership goes down further and further. And so I was asked to look at the financial aspects of this decision. And so what, as a city, we need to look at financially is what we had before and what we had after. And I didn't do an appraisal on the land per se, but what I did, if you look at the first column, we looked at general prices in the range that we thought the property could fit in, to make sure when we did our analysis that we could make sure that the deal was a good or bad deal, that it worked or didn't work, regardless of what the value of the land was. So we take the value of the golf course land anywhere from $150 to $275 per acre. Then we multiply that by 20 acres because the city is going to receive 20 acres of land as part of this deal. That land will be fee simple. You can do whatever you want with it, so it has full value. So we multiply those values at the price times the 20 acres, come up with the value of what you're going to get in land value. Then there's also some parking facilities and some buildings on the property that contribute approximately $300,000 to the property. That will also belong to the city after the deal is done. Finally, Mr. Peterson's going to include $2.5 million worth of improvements, and that needs to be added in. So if you come over to the fifth column, you can see the total value of the offer made to Orem City. If you believe the land up there is worth $150,000 an acre, then you believe that the total offer to Orem City is about $5.8 million. However, if you're real excited about the market and you think values are as high as $275,000 per acre, then his offer could be as high as $8.3 million. Now we have to compare that to what we have right now. And what we did was a discounted cash flow analysis. And we just take the payments that you're going to receive over the next 53 years, and we discount them back to present value. And value in the future is not worth nearly as much as value today is. And you're also going to get the land back in 53 years. And we've appreciated the value of the land out 53 years, and then we discount it back to today's dollars. And when you add all of those values up, you come up with anywhere between $809,000 to as high as $1.47 million. So obviously from this chart, financially, this is a great decision for the city. The Orem City's gain could be anywhere from about $5 million to almost $7 million by following through with this. Of course, this is financial only. And for those people that may not understand discounted cash flow analysis, maybe I can give just a quick example. If you were about to buy a house for $200,000 and you were excited to move in, and just before you bought the house, the seller told you, oh, by the way, I've leased this house to my grandmother or to my children for the next 50 years for $1 a year. So even though you're buying it today, you really can't do anything with this house. You can't move in. You can't have any use of this home for another 50 years. What would that home be worth to you? Is it still worth $200,000? No. It's worth far less, significantly less. Quite honestly, I won't be alive when this lease runs out. And I think a lot of people in this room won't be. It's a long time. There's a lot of risk. A lot of things may happen. That's why the value is so low. The city can sell what they have. They can sell this property subject to the lease. But there are not a lot of people that want to wait 54 years to get their return. And so that's the price you're looking at. Are there any questions?
Council, Mr. Chief.
I know that in a net present value analysis, the interest rate is pretty significant. Can you tell me what interest rate you use as part of calculation?
We actually don't use an interest rate in a straight discounted cash flow analysis. What we use is a discount rate. So we assume the property is not leveraged. And the discount rate, I honestly gave the city the benefit of the doubt, putting the very highest value on their property. The discount rate I use is 7.5%. And usually the discount rate for something that goes out that far is 8, 9, or 10%. But I felt like this was a pretty safe investment. It's land. There's no significant improvements to depreciate. So I used the very bottom of the range of the discount rate, which puts your value as of today, your value for what you have today at the very highest possible level.
Thank you.
Other questions, council? Okay, thank you. We'll have a chance in the public hearing in a minute to, you have something to
I
correct.
just wanted to ask a question.
Is it related to the discount
It's
rate?
related to the value, yes.
Okay, well, we'll take this one, but then all the rest will wait till the public hearing.
Can you use the microphone?
Yeah, if you could come up just because we need to get you on the record, and then all the rest will hold this one, we'll just let you take. You okay to take one question on?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And then we'll have others come up during the public hearing. Thank you, sir. You can state your name and address just for the minutes.
My name is Peter Van Orman, and I live at 448 East, 90 North in Orem, just east of the senior citizens. I'd like to ask the appraiser if he took into consideration replacement cost, assuming that the city is in the has an interest in parks, golf courses, and places like that that are not income producing. Assuming that the city wanted to have a golf course like most other cities, this is part of the budget. If we wanted to take that money and buy another golf course, replace Cascade golf course and buy a golf course, what would it cost to replace this golf course? I believe it would cost at least 2 or 3 million to replace the improvements that are in there also. Buy the land, buy the irrigation system and so forth to replace this. And what would that cost?
Thank you. Any comment, and then we'll get back to you, Bruce, after this one.
That wasn't the question for me to review, and so I didn't go through that, but it's something that can be done.
Thank you.
I might point out that the city of Orem has with Cascade, we do have another 18-hole golf course within the city of Orem. So the city does have a golf course. Right now we have two, but we have Sleepy Ridge that's in Orem, which is another nice 18-hole golf course. So the city is not without the benefit of a golf course within the community. We do have another golf course within the community. So
have you proceed with any other parts of
the next part of the presentation is that we're going to turn the time over to Horace to talk about traffic and parking. So we'll let the computer boot up and